So, guys, KULR stock has been on some really big news recently after moving into not just the AI space and changing their domain, but also having their Bitcoin reserve. And then just recently starting to get into robotics. But the question is this too much of a focus on multiple things at once? I think the number one thing I've learned personally as a business owner and entrepreneur is if you're trying to focus on many things at once, it can really hurt your business. In fact, it's one of the number one ways that most businesses fail. So I'm not really too sure about the strength in that their profits are going to really see a reflection of the new diversification that they're having in their company. So let's take a look recently. If you take a look at Space Tech, head over to KULR. They've been consolidating from left to right since February. And recently they sold off from this $1.88 range down to here. Now, you guys are good investors. You guys, if you're tuning in, you're probably pretty deep in the industry, especially if you're looking at KULR, because there's not a lot of really companies that are pushing the boundaries of AI, of robotics, of Bitcoin all at once. So you got to be curious. Maybe you're probably a pretty good investor yourself. What do you think about this move? Because if we go to KULR Technology, unfortunately, they're actually seen as a space company originally. They have partnerships with NASA, and it says they're trusted by NASA for their batteries that they make. But when I went to the space symposium in Colorado, they weren't there. Now, some people commented on my video, said they weren't there because they're focusing more on AI now, Will. They're not going to focus as much on space. Well, I got to see Rocket Lab. I got to see Lockheed Martin. I got to see, Redwire. We got to meet Boeing executives, Air Force Research Laboratories, Space Force type of companies. When it comes to KULR, their main products are battery tech for space. In fact, they are very adamant about saying we build batteries that are thermally resistant to all extreme temperatures, and that's why they're really good for space technology. However, they weren't at the Space Symposium, and apparently they're going more into AI. However, on their site it says space, aerospace, and defense. So my question was, why didn't they go to the symposium? I mean, they had gone in the past, but this year they are not going. What's going on there? Are they? What's the reason for not showing up? I mean, a lot of people investors go to the symposium. It was sponsored by SpaceX. You got to see SpaceX. You see all of the biggest companies in the world that are in space tech there, and they weren't there. So the reason I say that is because we went to the event. We flew out to the event from California. They weren't there when it was anticipated that they would be. And then after they weren't there, there hasn't been many articles about space tech. In fact, their latest article was based on robotics. So they're talking about they're expanding to robotics, and they also changed their domain to kulr.ai rather than kulrtechnology.com. So that's something they're focused on, robotics. And then you hear them talk about maybe not just robotics, but they got the Navy contracts. They got the contracts with Army for drone tech for stabilizing them and making them be more resistant or less prone to extreme vibrations. And in that type of space, now you're looking at software. So you got software, you got AI. Then they have this Bitcoin move where they're allocating 90% of their money into Bitcoin. So why are we covering all this? What is the reason? The reason is they're pushing the edges. And when you push the edges, you have potentially more rewards. But at the same time, you have some more risk associated with doing so. And right now, if you take a look at the three things we look at, which is the chart, the news, and after looking at the market, the financials. The financials have looked okay. I mean, their net income, they're negative. They're still up year over year. They were beating or meeting their earnings, so it looks pretty good. When you talk about a space company or any company, one of the questions that I'm often asking, even in our own company, is how can we look at the industry? How is it going to be conducted 5 years from now? And then we try and do it now. Now, when it comes to KULR, they're doing that, I think. They're saying, how will most people hold their money? And they're saying crypto. So what do? They're putting 90% of their cash into Bitcoin. Is it risky? Yeah, potentially. In this economy, less risky? No, also potentially. So they're doing that. Then you have, okay, what about, that's the financial side. Maybe the 5 years from now way of looking at things is, all your money in Bitcoin, and you have more investments that are growing, good investments, something like that. Then they're saying, okay, what about battery tech? Yeah, we're doing batteries. We keep doing batteries. They have a positioned manufacturing place right next to Lockheed Martin and right next to some of the companies like Leidos in the defense and aerospace. And it's in Texas, so they're right there near NASA. And so, okay, we do the batteries. They're saying, and we continue to build batteries that are for satellites, that are for space. Okay, they're looking ahead. Then they're saying, all right, now let's jump into robotics. How can we do robotics? 5 years from now, we're not just a robotics company. We're also helping with the robotics of as humans start to need robotics to optimize their workflows so they're not using as much energy. And as you can see, they have this technology here that optimizes the work that humans perform and makes them essentially stronger, like more bionic. It's an exoskeleton. And so they're saying, yeah, in 5 years from now, we're gonna do more robotics, and we're gonna power some of the robotics, and we're also going to have our and it's almost a little indoctrinating to see this right here. You see the tech, then they show the stock, and they show this, an explosion with America. That's a little indoctrinating and strange to put into an educational video. Because I'm looking here and I'm saying pretty good marketing. This is probably the German company here. And I haven't seen KULR. I've only seen, other companies so far. But a KULR logo on the bottom right. So nothing that's really branded KULR. But then they have a robot there that has a KULR logo on it, which actually doesn't look like it's actually a KULR logo. It actually looks like it's a graphic design that somebody put. So what is this? FANUC LR mates 200 ID. This is a robot that is not a KULR robot. This is a robot that is built by FANUC America. Okay, this is American Robotics Company. And what did they do? They have an image of it here, and they just put the KULR logo on it. They slapped and it's not even an actual sticker or embroidery. It looks like it's a graphic that they put on it. Okay? Kind of strange. Okay, they put a graphic, a KULR graphic. It's not their robot, but they put their logo on it. So those are things that to me seem kind of fishy and weird for a company to do, and kind of look like hype, right? Hype it up a little bit. Then you have the other company again,
and logistics centers. This strategic partnership enables
and they're talking about, again, they show the robot. And it's interesting, okay? So you get through there, and also you got to look, I'm just looking at it from a perspective, right? Of there was that, and then when we used to look at the announcements of investors and we were looking at some of the images that they were using, they were like kind of fake images, not like that they said that it was their product, but that when we Googled the image, like look how advanced that looks, but that's not actually realistic. And we like Google, it's on Pixabay, it looks really flashy and nice. It looks flashy and cool, but it's like, is it the real? Let's see inside their own factory. Let's see their own batteries and things like that. So anyway, then you go back. I'm just not fully convinced. The marketing is like, we're doing robotics now. We're also doing this. We're also doing that. And we're doing Bitcoin now. And it's like, there's difference between value stacking the company and all the things that the company's doing as valuable. For example, like Tesla, I think would be a legit. We're doing robotaxi, we're doing autonomous, we're also doing Optimus. You can see we have production, manufacturing, gigafactories actually building these things, and they're really like showing the actual manufacturing, and you can see them like out on the streets. You see more Teslas and things like that, right? Not necessarily looking to see KULR right in front of my face as far as being on the street and seeing them, but I am saying that you see a value stack of, okay, that will tie good into Starlink with Tesla. That'll tie good into Starlink. Starlink will help with the internet for the robots and for the cars. So they have an advantage. There's a value stack there. Oh, and then you have SpaceX, and that's launching there, and that allows them to easily expand their Starlink or what have you, right? So you see this, all these pictures, you're like, wow, look at all the value that's actually tying into Tesla. When you look at this company, KULR, it doesn't really feel that way to me. It feels like that they're just pointing things out that are supposed to get me excited, but it's not necessarily theirs. Does that make sense? It's like, okay, they're doing the strategy of Bitcoin. How much hype can that last? So anyway, we see it here. I think it's more likely that we see it sell down to this previous support than we do see it push up to this $193 range, at least right now. I haven't seen any big catalyst moves. When it comes to this spike we saw up to $5.60, it was at under $1 and it built some market cap. But take a look, it is selling off. You do see that move take place. And if we just kind of look at the overall trend right now, I would say I need to see a break definitely above $1.50 before we start to really look at this and say, I want to get back in. Now, when it comes to KULR, I don't have long-term positions in KULR, but we cover it quite often because of the swings that take place. I mean, when we were looking at some of the swings, for example, this swing to here, when we're trading it, was 70%. That's a 70% swing. If we see it get up above this level, it's a 50% swing. If we see it get to previous highs, it's a 78% swing. I mean, these are big swings that take place. But nevertheless, you have to have caution, especially when we're seeing all the hype that's going around the company. So for that reason, we're going to see if it holds. If it pushes up above the $1.50 range, we're more bullish. But as of right now, it is in a downtrend and almost looks like it could sell back down to this 50-cent range based on this chart that we're looking at here. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Again, when it comes to KULR, I wish that I could be more bullish on it, but that's just how it looks right now. If you guys have questions or you have some comments about certain things that maybe I missed and I didn't cover, or maybe you're saying, Will, you've talked so highly about KULR stock in the past. What's going on now? What's selling off? What's going on? When it comes to the value that they've provided, it was looking a lot more valuable as you started to look at their financials, but they recently reported a little bit less of a net income. And on top of the financials looking okay, since we started covering them during that time, they also allocate 90% of their cash to Bitcoin. There's still questions they haven't answered in that regard. Like, for example, are they selling their own stock to buy Bitcoin? Or are they buying Bitcoin with profits? Because if they're selling their own stock, that dilutes investors and, in my opinion, isn't good for their overall stock price. So they haven't clarified that. And so because they didn't clarify that, even though they're covering it in their they cover all of the reasons why they're doing Bitcoin, they don't say, are they selling their own stock in order to buy Bitcoin? And without that clarification, there's more uncertainty. Less clarity means less simplicity. And I'm trying to invest in companies that are obviously growing in space, in tech, in quantum, or in AI. And in order for us to invest in them, it has to be simple, has to be clear. We got to know exactly why it is that they would continue to grow as a company. And when we're looking at KULR right now, I'm not seeing any clear indication for confirmation that they are going to experience explosive growth at this moment. But we'll keep you guys updated and let you know if anything changes in that regard. And again, there's other companies that we are having more confirmation on and seeing some movements that make a lot of sense, especially around this tariff war that's happening, and especially related to semiconductors and microchip companies. That market is swinging, and there's a lot of opportunities we're finding there. Everyone that's been inside of Stockmates has been watching me trade each and every morning at market open, If you guys want to be there and watch me trade live and see my entries and my exits, it's the second link in the description to join. We also have a huge sale there with Easter, so I would encourage you guys to simply take a look. Again, it's that second link down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you all. I'll see you in my next video. Take care.